Brian Sitcer here, DroneXspecialists, and we are moving on. We just finished federal aviation regulations, and now we're hitting into airspace. Lesson 2, Module 1, National Airspace System. The National Airspace System, this is the environment in which we're going to be operating. You as a commercial drone operator will be operating every day in the National Airspace System. The National Airspace System is divided into, let's call it, 2 segments: the regulatory airspace side and the non-regulatory airspace side. We're going to break that down in succeeding lessons. But what you need to know is regulatory airspace, class A, B, C, D, restricted, prohibited, etc. Those are airspaces that are controlled, it's going to be a big word, by a controlling agency, an air traffic controlling agency. Non-regulatory airspace doesn't have nearly as much oversight. That doesn't mean it's not going to have some kind of controlling agency that you can work with when you're in that airspace. It just means that it's a lot less regulated than regulatory airspace. Everything you wanted to know about airspace, its horizontal and vertical dimensions, whether or not you can fly in there, where exactly it is, that can be found on sectional charts, terminal charts, and in the Chart Supplement US manual, which all of these are available at local pilot shops. You can get them online. They have various apps out there that you can use. One of my favorites is ForeFlight, where it actually integrates all the charts with weather products, which again, we'll talk about a little later on. You can get everything you need to know about airspace from these supporting documents. Anything you wanted to know about operating in these airspaces, the specifics on how to get around, the procedures, if you will, can be found in the Airman's Information Manual, the AIM. This is really important. Like we've talked about in previous lessons, this is one of those ring knocker questions. Anytime you see a question on the Airman Knowledge Test that pertains to the Aeronautical Information Manual, the AIM, chances are that's the right answer. The AIM is packed with all kinds of information of a non-regulatory nature that pilots need to operate in various environments. It gives you a lot of tips and tricks for operating in traffic patterns, in airspace. It's just packed with information. I highly recommend you check it out as you work towards becoming a more professional aviator. Information about airspace is presented to us in NOTAMs, Notices to Airmen. Now, in the previous slide, we talked about the different maps and charts and materials that you can use to find out what's going on with airspace, the different dimensions, heights, etc. They don't always stay the same. A lot of times airspace will change. As airspace changes, the FAA has to issue what are called NOTAMs, Notices to Airmen. They give us up-to-date information about changes in the National Airspace System. You can find these in a number of places on the web, www.faa.gov. You can simply call on your smartphone, 1-800-WX-BRIEF. You'll actually speak to a weather briefer. Various companies around the country are involved in this. Lockheed Martin, I believe, is one of them. And you'll speak to a weather briefer who'll give you all the up-to-date information about what's going on in the airspace around you. There's also a Notices to Airmen publication, the NTAP, issued every 28 days, available at pilot shops or online at FAA.gov. You can actually read through hundreds of different NOTAMs and try to make sense of it. I like the previous two, 1-800-WX-BRIEF and FAA.gov, a little bit better. It's a little bit easier to navigate, if you will, than the Notices to Airmen publication. Within the Notices to Airmen publication, or available on 1-800-WX-BRIEF or at FAA.gov, there are 4 types of NOTAMs that you'll be looking for. 2 of any real relevance. The FDC NOTAMs, the Flight Data Center NOTAMs, or what we like to refer to as the frickin' darn critical ones. These are NOTAMs that are incredibly important. You need to know what's going on right now about the airspace around you, because not knowing about this may lead to you violating some kind of maybe a temporary flight restriction, some type of change to local airspace. What is contained within an FDC NOTAM is really critical to your flight operation. Distant NOTAMs, these are, consider it local and distant. They changed over the years. Now everything about airports or that may affect your route of flight but are not considered critical are considered D, or distant NOTAMs. Again, those are very important, but not nearly as important as the issuance of an FDC NOTAM. Examples of a distant NOTAM might be runway closures, or there might be some lights that are out, or some services that are unavailable. You'll see that the distant NOTAMs kind of run the gamut. But either way, distant NOTAMs make you think, oh, I may have to make a slight change to my plan, but I can still continue. Whereas an FDC NOTAM might cause you to completely rethink your flight. So check those out. Pointer NOTAMs, I'll be honest with you, we don't use them very much. A pointer NOTAM it literally points out other NOTAMs that it wants you to see for the purpose of cross-referencing. And military NOTAMs, as the name implies, that has a lot to do with what's going on in military airspace or with military operations. And I have found that there's really not a whole lot of relevance in the civilian world for military NOTAMs. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a look at them and become familiar with them. They're written in the same format. But I just don't think that anything in a military NOTAM will really affect your flight planning. So focus on FDC and the distant, or D, NOTAMs. Of probably the most importance to pilots when it comes to NOTAMs and airspace are TFRs, temporary flight restrictions. This is I wouldn't say it's a type of airspace, but it is a restriction in predetermined airspace that keeps pilots away from a particular event or person or goings on in that airspace. It protects persons and property in the air and on the ground from existing imminent flight hazards. It provides a safe operation for disaster relief, like firefighting. If there's a big fire going on, they'll issue a TFR in whatever airspace it happens to affect. And that keeps all civilian and military aircraft away from the working aircraft that are spotting the fire or dropping different types of fire suppressants on the fire. If there is a sporting event going on, okay, we don't want a whole bunch of people flying their airplanes or their drones in that area, we again will issue an FDC NOTAM for a TFR to prevent unsafe congestion of sightseeing aircraft above an incident or event. Anytime the President of the United States or the Vice President of the United States or any other public figures are on the move, a TFR will usually follow them. And again, they're just trying to keep people who have no business being around those individuals away from them. And that's just for their safety. And most recently, and probably most exciting of all, TFRs provide a safe environment for space operations. This didn't really exist when I was learning to fly back in the late 90s and early 2000s. But now I like to check the different sites for NOTAMs, and it's kind of fun to see that SpaceX or NASA or Scaled Composites up at Mojave Airport have something going on. They'll be launching a rocket or doing some kind of testing, and they'll issue a TFR, again, generally for safety of all people involved. So TFRs, very, very critical. They pop up all the time, and you really need to be on top of that. So again, these exist within the current national airspace structure. It could be Class B, Class C, Class D airspace. The TFR will come in and it will take precedence over that particular type of airspace. So again, check your NOTAMs, use your resources, and stay out of airspace that you are not supposed to go into. We'll talk more about the specifics of each airspace in later modules.